Now, one question or conversation that we have a lot, especially at our lake, is when the average skier is practicing, should they try to clean up a set first? Like, say they're working on 32 miles an hour, 15 off. Should they try to master that before ever even attempting 34? Or should they sprinkle in some 34s and try to push themselves a little bit so that they don't get in a rut, if you will,
Sure.
at that speed and line length?
I think that's a great question and something that gets overlooked. There's got to be a balance, just like anything. When I coach people in a training situation or a coaching situation, a lot of times it's better to focus on the passes that you can run, keep your brain in it, feel the movements, that sort of stuff. But you have to push yourself. I mean, I spent a couple of years at one point staying at one of my entry-level passes more often than I should, and you become complacent. You know, the more difficult passes increase in difficulty because it's such a foreign feeling. So there's a balance. I would suggest with a skier that's really still learning technique and rhythm and things, it's probably about a 2-to-1 deal. So 2/3 of the time you want to be running passes that you can run, concentrating on feeling fluid rhythms and occasionally working on details. And 1/3 of the time, maybe even a little less, maybe 1/4 of the time, push yourself.
Okay.
You know? Splash down a little bit. Don't get hurt, but go to the point that you can't make another buoy, or that you're, you know, moving at a pace that's a little uncomfortable for you. You got to get outside of the envelope, but then don't be afraid to retreat back and do something easy. And I actually often say within a set, if you decide you're going to push yourself that set, just don't end on the failure. Run one clean, easy pass, even if you decide to shadow the buoys at the end, just to end with a confident, rhythmic feeling where you can take it to the next set.
Sure, very good. Another topic of conversation that is always on 15 off is the weight crossing position. And, you know, of course, you know, I'm a little prone to it out there, but getting in a defensive position while crossing the wake. You know, how is it just a matter of just complete repetition and things like that to get away from that? Is it something purely psychological where you find that skiers are just afraid of the wake? How do you eventually overcome that that defensive position crossing the wake?
You know, I think you hit part of it. It's but repetition definitely creates comfort.
Okay.
One of the things, just as a quick example, that I did years ago down at Gordon Rathman's in Mexico, because he had done it and he mentioned it, I mounted up a set of boots opposite foot forward.
Oh.
I went out right foot forward, which, by the way, it took me 3 times to get up, and I had to use the easy up. So I'm definitely not the most skilled human being on earth. Repetition's the only reason I do what I do.
Sure.
But once I got up, as much as I told myself all the things that I tell students, I retreated to that position through the wakes. Which, had I never done that, I would say, oh, you just got to convince yourself up here. Truly, it is a defensive position. It's a comfortable position, even though we all know intellectually that it's a dangerous position. We squat. We get as low as we can, and we hunker down, and we fear what could happen. So repetition is part of it. You know, I was able to slowly, I did about 3 sets that way, and I was able to get in better positions, but as soon as I sped the boat up, I went back to it, just like we all do, right?
Right.
But the other aspect of that is you're really always a product of the step before. And everyone thinks they know how to turn a ski, self-included. But my onside turn, just like most people's onside turn, looks great and causes more problems than anything on earth. People always say, oh, I feel terrible on my offside. And you look back at their offside and they're making a big, heavy turn, falling away from the boat, and they load the rope and load the boat. By the time they get to the wakes, the boat starts winning, and here you are in this position again. Takes you straight to your offside turn. I'm showing it this way because I'm left foot forward.
Sure.
It takes you straight into your offside turn, and all of a sudden you say, I can't turn my offside turn. Well, because of your direct approach, because of your bad position through the wakes. So, not that hard onside turn is the only reason for it, but look at the step prior, or the step prior to that. Keep backing up until you find the root of a problem. Don't get too good at it, because then it puts coaches out of business.
Right.
But that's the idea. You know, anyone can say, hey, you got slack rope. Hey, you're in a bad position through the wakes. But we have to back up and figure out why.
Right.
You know, a lot of times it's starting with poor balance, poor stance on the ski. A lot of times it's the rhythm. Again, taking too hard of a turn or too hard of a lean.
Right.
You sent me a picture asking about, was it too much of a lean out of the turn?
Right.
Sometimes yes.
Right.
Serge, who skis with us, looks beautiful, but he loads hard out of the turn and loses efficiency, and it pulls him out of position from time to time. So that's probably the most general answer I can give to that.
Sure. Very good.